let's move on to our next topic regarding the man Harry Kane. And there was been a lot of comments throughout the week, seeing as Harry Kane was mentioning Spurs in one of his interviews with The Independent whilst he was on international duty. A lot of Spurs fans did feel that Harry Kane disrespected Spurs with those comments. So I'll just quickly read them out to you, the snippet that people have been up in arms about. But it goes, "It's definitely a different pressure compared to what it felt at Spurs. Of course, we wanted to win things at Spurs, but if you went a couple of games without winning, it wasn't a disaster. The feeling at Bayern is that you have to win every game. We won the first 2 games 4-0 and 3-1, and there's still people not too happy about the way we played. That's part and parcel about being one of the biggest clubs in the world. We've had a good start, and I'm enjoying those different emotions, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to go. And we start the Champions League campaign when we get back, which they expect to win or have a good chance of winning. So you're going to get those games with maybe a different feeling to what I had in the past." So, Sonny, do you think that is Harry Kane disrespecting Spurs, or are Spurs fans just getting a bit too touchy-feely about the whole situation?
I mean, I don't want to, rustle a few feathers here, but he's not wrong.
Feathers, man. Rustle them. I mean, rustle them. We like rustling feathers.
Okay, I'm going to kick off now. I feel like he's not wrong. Bayern Munich is a whole level above Tottenham. Like, they aspire to be Champions League, getting to the final, winning it year in, year out. They've got a big chance this year. Thomas Tuchel, full season. They've signed, Kim Min-jae, a lot of good players there now. They've shifted some of their deadwood as well. And then they've paid a lot for Harry Kane. So there is a lot of pressure. He's obviously turned up. He's one of the new guys. He's not going to come in and he wants to make a good impression on the fans as well. He's going to come in and say, I know it's good pressure, but I'm willing to face the pressure. Is he disrespecting Tottenham though? I'm a bit on the fence about this because obviously, I don't know if you guys saw today, Bale at the golf, and he was saying how good, Tottenham, and talking about Brennan Johnson, and says about, dig at Arsenal, and we all love it because it's a little bit of a tidbit there. But then when we have this, it does, put a cat amongst the pigeons because we're all very defensive. Football's very tribal. We're going to defend our club till the cows come home. And I just feel like it did. At first, I was a bit like, okay, you shouldn't have really mentioned us. Because what it then did was it lit a bit of a fire of people going, well, you didn't turn up for us in this final. You didn't turn up in this semi. You didn't score here. You weren't involved in it. And that's the bit where I'm like, I feel like people go a bit too far. I feel like when you're digging him out, I feel like, he's record goal scorer. He's amazing. He has done so much for this club. And we let him leave in the end because we had to cash in on him. We had to. We couldn't let him go on a free next year. But at first, I took it with a bit of pinch of salt. And then I'm just like, you do you, mate. Hopefully, United knock them out of the group stages and, we maybe go in for a run in the FA Cup and we don't have to worry about those quotes.
He's going to score a hat-trick next week against Bayern.
Yeah, he will. Now I've said that. I'll put the curse. Just put it down there.
But Iggy, I got a feeling you got quite a bit to say on this one. So what are you thinking about the Kane thing?
Listen, the guy spoke truth. Let's be honest. We all think exactly the same thing on this. I failed to understand why people would be touchy about this subject. The only thing I will say for Kane in regards to the mentality and this, how he's gone to buy. First of all, there's 2 clubs with 2 different. Like Bayern Munich has a massive expectation. They've got to compete to win domestic. That alone is a failure if they're not to do so. They have to absolutely be in that top 4 in regard to Champions League. They have to at least make the quarter semi-final. Anything outside of that is failure. So already that mindset, that mentality within the store of the club, something that we badly miss at our club, is already there. So he's gotten into that, seeing that and thinking, wow, they don't mess about it. 3-1 and 4-0 and they're still moaning. All right. That is not, obviously he's come from a different mindset at Spurs. What I will say to Harry Kane is,
sorry, Iggy, but he saw us win 1-0 3 times in a row under Nuno, and all the fans would be like, "Oh, come on, Nuno, ball is here."
But we're losing 4-1 and 3-1.
What I will say about Kane is this mentality that we've had at Spain. He's been part of it for the last 10, 11 years. So we don't know how much he's done to change that. We don't know what's happened behind the scenes, but obviously he's made it clear all along he wants to win trophies. So his mindset has always been one that he wants to succeed, he wants to win trophies, and he would have loved to have done that at Spurs. That part, I honestly believe that. I don't know how everyone else feels about it, but I've always felt that he's wanted to win at Spurs, and he tried to stay as long as he can. He's bought into promises which were then broken. So I get that there's maybe an element of little dig and bitterness about it. Probably bitter is more than the fact he wasn't able to achieve. So going into a new setup with him, with what Bayern Munich have got going on, I get it, man. I get it, and I don't feel that he's said anything that's hurting us. But why he's saying it right now? Maybe because we're doing a little bit too well without him, and he's like, there's going to be an element of that. There will be. I don't care what anyone says. There will be an element. How these guys doing so well without me? I was expecting him to struggle a bit more. He might have gone easy with his wording this time around. But look, in the grand scheme of things, context-wise, he didn't say anything that wasn't true. It has to be said.
But did he really have to say it's not?
It wasn't necessary, but
did he really have to say it's not a disaster if Spurs don't win a couple of games? Did he really have to say that?
It's not a disaster if we don't win a trophy for 23 years. It's not a disaster, it's a disaster if we don't make top four though. It's just all the things that gets me and probably gets you as well. Like, you want to change that mentality of this club, and and when other people say it, you agree with it, but it still hurts, man. It still hurts, and that's the part that gets me. That what he said is true, but it doesn't make it less. Oh yeah, it's the truth. I'm all right with it. No, I'm not all right with it. I want to change that, but of course, we're at the mercy of other people, and let's not open that one up. Man. I mean, I'm just gonna stop right there.
Keep that can of worms right in that can.
Yeah, I'll keep that there, man.
Do you think that Iggy though? Do you think there is that kind of a little bit of that element of Kane's thinking, looking over at what Tottenham are doing now, thinking, you know what? If I was in that team, we could do big things.
I think if we hadn't gone through Jose and then Conte and then Bruno and we'd done it a little bit sooner, maybe this after Pochettino had gone, you would have felt there was a continuation at the very least. Someone new, someone dynamic, but with the same ideology of principle of the way we should be playing football. Maybe, but we went vroom to this style of football, vroom to that one, and then we was going to back him, then we didn't, then with promises, then defensive style football, attacking football. It was just too much. And then all of this whilst Kane is getting older. And he's thinking, man, I'm in my 30s now. This ain't happening, is it? He was brought in after Nuno. He was, down tools. Then Conte, he changed his mind. Then Mourinho had got something, and you're thinking yourself, right, yes, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. And we all felt like that. We all was in that same boat. And then when they all left, you're like, man, this ain't. We all said it. Man, this ain't gonna happen for us, is it? It's not actually gonna. And he's like, I want to win. I'm running out of time here. And Bayern Munich, there's no way. I always thought he would go Real Madrid, Barcelona, someone like that. I never ever thought Bayern Munich would be that club. But when you look at it, like, he needs guaranteed, and he's how much has he upped his percentage of winning trophies this year? Massively, when you think about it. So I think he'll do a couple of years there, and he'll come back in the Premier League. Whether it would be at Spurs, I don't know. I'm even doubting he'll come back at Spurs, but I do believe he'll come back in the Premier League though to beat that record.
Yeah, I think so as well. But it's like, it still doesn't sit right with me that he's playing for Bayern Munich of all clubs. Like, why go out to Germany? I just don't get it. I still don't get it. But anyway, that's another day, another topic for another day. But Sim, what are you feeling about this situation? Do you think he disrespected Spurs at all?
I don't think he necessarily disrespected Spurs, but what I would say is, I did feel like he didn't have to say it in the way he said it, in terms of, in Tottenham you can lose 2 games in a row and it's not the end of the world. He could have just said, look, Bayern the pressures to win every game, and at Spurs the pressure's a little different. He could have just been quite vague about it. He didn't have to be quite as specific. But at the end of the day, I did feel like there was a bit of maybe like how we left Spurs. Obviously, the whole thing about the Man City and the gentleman's agreement, and then going on to, we had Conte. He probably liked Conte, but again, we never really challenged for anything big under Conte. We just sneaked into top 4, and then it all fell apart again. He probably just felt a bit fed up with the whole situation, considering off the back of that, under Jose, he got the Golden Boot and the best and the most assists in the season. Under Conte, in the second half of that season. I think he got like 15 goals or something, and then he got 30 goals last season. So, but by and large, he's been maintaining his standards. And for him, I always felt like for him, when you looked at like shots of after big losses or after losses in general, I feel like you saw in his face how much it hurt him and how disappointed he was after games. Whereas I didn't always feel like that with the other players. And I definitely as well, when you saw a bit behind the curtain in the documentary, I think like you saw there were elements where we would have a defeat, and like Kane would be the one showing a lot more frustration. He'll be the one in the training saying, "Look, we have to do a lot better. This is unacceptable." But like, I didn't feel like this. It was the same vibe from a lot of the players that they saw it as bad as it was. Whereas Kane, I always felt like was a lot more frustrated. So I understand where people point to the fact where they say, "Well, look, if that was the culture, you were part of the leadership team, so it's on, it's part of your responsibility was to change that." And that's a fair comment, but at the end of the day, he's maintained his standards. At the end of the day, he was scoring 25, 30 goals season in, season out, and he was the best striker in the league for every single season. Not everyone can say that. A lot of other players had a lot of inconsistent form. They didn't really show the consistency that Harry Kane did. So I think he did everything he can. I don't think you could say Kane could have done more, really, in terms of his time at Tottenham. And even when you go back to that overlap interview you did with Harry Kane, with Gary Neville, he was saying, like, everyone points to the fact that he said, "Oh yeah, he wants to win trophies and stuff like that." But he also said, if we're not going to win trophies, but the next target would be got to be secure in Champions League by April, May time, and you've got that's a sign of a good season. And at the end of the day, in his last 3 seasons, we finished 7th, 6th, and 8th in 3 of his last 4 seasons. So I like, and he was banging in the goals every year. So I can understand his frustration. I can understand it spilled over a bit. It's not nice to hear, and maybe he could have put things a different way. But at the end of the day, the truth hurts sometimes, and I think that's just an example of that.
Sim, I want to add a little bit to what you're saying. I agree. I will add this. Like, I don't feel he was digging out the fans, man. I feel like he loves Spurs, and he loved it. I think that was evident for me anyway. I always perceived it like he loved the fans and us. I think for me it was more to do having a little dig at somebody in the board. Getting a few,
100% is the highlight.
a few stones. When he left Spurs, a few stones were still in his shoes. For example, he wasn't allowed at Hotspur away to go and get his things out of the locker that were sent to his house. I don't know how many people know this. He wasn't allowed to say his goodbyes to his teammates. His family were not allowed to enter the premises anymore. This is all because he was, everything. Once the deal was happening to Bayern Munich, they cut him off. That came from above at Spurs. Many people know this. When you feel like you leave, and then when he arrives at Spurs, he hugs Tuchel finally, as if to say, like, it's over. Like, I think it was more to do with the relationship, that how it become towards the end with him and the powers that be. I don't think it's got anything to do with the fans. I think we always treated him well. He always treated us well. Bar the whole Nuno, and then his return to Wolverhampton, and then there was a bit weird then, but that quickly, turned into like cheers again after he started scoring goals. So for me, I don't think the issues with the fans. I get why the fans or section and fan why they would feel that way, but I think it was definitely to do with the way he departed Spurs and how it all went about, and we know who's digging out. So I wouldn't worry too much about it, man.
Iggy,
I hope to see him back at Spurs, obviously.
When you mention the name Tottenham, the fans are always going to put themselves in that. You know what I mean? So I kind of understand the fans to a certain extent, the ones that are.
He wasn't going to come out with a name, though, would he, Ben? He wasn't going to come out with a name, was he?
Obviously. And I think, like, if he is going to say something, that's the way to say it. But and the way he was treated, like you're saying, at the end of his time at Tottenham, not being let in the training ground, not being able to go to his box to get his stuff and all that kind of stuff. Bad. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. How do you treat a club legend like that? Instead of building him a statue, which they should do outside the ground for being our top.
Which he said as well. He said that, didn't he, at that speech at that university a couple of months ago? "Oh, we'll build him a statue," and then it's like,
yeah. And now you're not letting him in the training ground get your stuff. Like, come on, man.
They did the same with Pochettino, didn't they? If I remember rightly.
Yeah, they did. They
He
did.
had to write that message on the team tactics board to say
Yeah.
goodbye to the players that had been in charge of for such a long time. And I'm sure that stuff doesn't sit right with him as well. And we know he's had his problems with Daniel Levy in the past because of the gentleman's agreement.
Who hasn't?
So, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Who hasn't?
Yeah, but I don't think he disrespected Spurs. I wouldn't go that far. I don't think there was that kind of comment that was like disrespectful. I think he has respect for Tottenham, 100%. And I just think he was just outlining the reality of the situation. He was asked a direct question: what's the difference in the pressures between where you are now and where you were before and where you are now? And he laid it out very simply. And there's nothing wrong with that.
And the problem is, like, we saw, didn't we?
So
Like,
honest, Harry. Go on, sorry, Sonny.
no, that's all right. And then we saw, like, towards on the day before, he was literally, there was reports coming out of Sky, oh, he is keen to staying, but it was sort of like, not like Levy had set him up a little bit, as if to say, like, I'm going to make you the villain. I'm going to make it look like you've pushed the move. I'm going to, hold you at the airport until we've got each like little penny out of Bayern. And it was that sort of like manipulative energy from Levy to sort of be like, I want to show the fans that, we had to sell him. Like, we were going to lose him next year. He didn't want to sign a new deal. And it's like, you've held this guy prisoner for many years, and he has given a lot to us. But yeah, I think using the term, like some of the terms, and also I think he is a good media person. So when he is saying certain language like this, it almost is a bit like, well, it does feel a bit more of a dig, because he is usually quite a good person when you see him like for England or represent any clubs in the media.
Very professional, yeah. 100%. And like, I don't who does Levy, who does he think he's fooling, like trying to play these games saying, oh, it's all
over and over again. This is the same games we've been seeing. Modric, Bale had to go on strike. I mean, come on, man. This is like a non-going.
He called flight control as soon as Kane was about to take off. He's like, turn the plane around.
You know what I mean?
You really think Harry Kane didn't want to stay here for the rest of his career and flourish and win trophies and do all this stuff? There was only one man and one section of this club holding that back, and that was Daniel Levy in the hierarchy. And if Spurs went in the right direction after Pochettino left, or even after Jose left, if we went in the right direction in those moments in time, Harry Kane would still be here right now, and he wouldn't have had to have gone. And that's the facts of the matter.
Preach.
Anyway.